Leo, you've heard the chatter from the cabinet, Governor Thorne said, his voice smooth but his eyes hard. He tried to look regretful, gesturing around the mahogany-paneled office. They're not on board with you as chief of staff. My hands are tied. Then untie them. I shot back. Forget the whole thing. One Governor Marcus Thorne, perched behind his ridiculously large desk in the state capitol, flinched. His face, usually a mask of practiced political calm, tightened. Around the conference table, the other cabinet secretaries and advisors shifted in their seats. You could almost hear them thinking it. Leo Vance has a death wish talking to the governor like that. Leo, that's an outrageous way to speak to the governor. A sycophant from the Treasury Department immediately piped up, eager to score points. You forget who signs your paycheck. You should be on your knees, begging for forgiveness. An older senator, a relic from a bygone era, chimed in, his voice trembling with manufactured indignation. Governor, this man's arrogance is a threat to this administration. I urge you to have him removed. Make an example of him. I let out a cold laugh. These mediocre yes men, whose greatest skills were backstabbing and taking credit for other people's work. Without me, the Commonwealth of New Haven would be nothing more than a footnote in a history textbook. 10 years ago, I pulled the state back from the brink of total collapse. A decade ago, New Haven was being torn apart. Natural disasters had crippled our infrastructure, crime was rampant, and a radical domestic insurgency, calling themselves the Yellow Jackets, had seized control of the entire Rust Belt sector, amassing a militia of over 100,000. To make matters worse, the Calumet Confederacy and the Delmarva Alliance had mobilized their National Guards, a combined force of nearly 500,000 troops, right on our borders, ready to carve us up. New Haven was in a death spiral. Our people were fleeing, and panic was the only thing in abundance. That was the year Governor Thorne, then a desperate man in his 40s, found me. He stood before me under the shadow of the Lincoln Memorial and begged me, a prodigy from the Aries War College Initiative, to come save his state, to restore order and bring hope back to the people. He promised me power second only to his own, and he made another promise. The hand of his daughter, Helena Thorne, celebrated as the most beautiful woman in the Commonwealth. I was only 18, but I understood the weight of the moment. I accepted the impossible task. I went as an envoy to Calumet and Delmarva, and, through sheer force of will and strategic diplomacy, convinced them to stand down their armies. I neutralized a 400,000-strong threat without a single shot fired. The media started calling me the Maestro of Peace. Next, I took command of the state's forces. It took me 4 years of relentless campaigning, but I crushed the Yellow Jacket Rebellion, dismantling their entire network. The name Leo Vance became a boogeyman to the state's enemies, a name that could quiet a crying child. With the state secured, I rolled out a series of radical reforms, overhauling the tax code, breaking up the corrupt corporate monopolies, and revitalizing our economy. Slowly but surely, New Haven began to recover. We were no longer a failed state. We were a power player, a voice that mattered on the national stage. Though my official title was only acting chief of staff, everyone across the country knew the truth. They called me the Shadow Governor. Pundits on the news would say, Leo Vance runs New Haven with the precision of a surgeon. Other governors and corporate leaders tried to poach me, offering fortunes and power. I turned them all down. Part of it was loyalty to my home state. But the biggest reason was Helena Thorne, my fiancée. We'd known each other since our days at Georgetown, a whirlwind of late-night study sessions and shared ambitions. We fell in love, or so I thought. I was completely captivated by her, and she seemed to feel the same. We promised our futures to each other. A big part of why I'd agreed to work for her father was her. She told me the man she would marry had to be an eagle, soaring above all others. A man with power, second only to the highest in the land. For years, that was my singular goal. I drove myself to become the man she described, the hero she deserved. I would have handed her the world on a platter if she'd asked. And now, after all that, after I had achieved everything she'd wanted, I was being treated to this pathetic political theater. I've never cared much for titles or fame, but this humiliation lit a fire in my gut. Leo, what is the meaning of this? Governor Thorne's voice was laced with anger now. The nerve of this upstart, challenging him in his own office. Did Leo really think he ran this state? I waved a dismissive hand. It means what it sounds like. If the cabinet doesn't want me as chief of staff, then I won't be chief of staff. Let one of these other geniuses take the job. I didn't need a title. If it wasn't for Helena, I'd probably be off the grid somewhere, maybe running a charter boat in the Keys. Even without the official position, my influence was undeniable. I was still the second most powerful man in New Haven. A collective sigh of relief went through the room. My name carried too much weight. My fingerprints were on every major military and political decision of the last decade. If I officially became chief of staff, there would be no room left for their own petty ambitions. Governor Thorne's smile returned, slick and practiced. Now, don't be hasty, Leo. The consensus is simply that you're still young. The chief of staff position is a monumental responsibility. While you've done an admirable job acting in a role, there are still things to learn. After you've gained some more experience in other posts, the job will still be there for you. The governor is wise, the vultures chorused. As long as I wasn't officially in charge, they could live with it. They were terrified of me. To push my economic reforms, I had dismantled corporate dynasties that had stood for a century. And since I was a man with no family and no connections, they had no leverage over me. Worse, I had the unwavering loyalty of the military. The governor leaned back, savoring the moment. Leo, the director of Metropolitan Affairs position, is open. How would you feel about that? It's a key role, right here in the capital. It's certainly not beneath you. I almost laughed out loud. He had to be kidding. Director of Metro Affairs was a glorified, bureaucratic paper pusher. It was a political graveyard, a job that meant dealing with endless zoning disputes and the petty scandals of the city's elite. You'd spend your days making enemies of powerful people over trivial matters. It was a dead-end job designed to keep me bogged down and under his thumb. A brilliant move, I had to admit. No, thank you, Governor, I said, my voice firm as I stood. New Haven is strong again. Our institutions are stable, our economy is growing, and our military is second to none. I fulfilled the promise I made to you at the Lincoln Memorial. I looked him straight in the eye. All I want now is to marry Helena and live a quiet life. Even if it's just as an ordinary citizen, I'd be happy. I asked for your blessing. This was all I had ever truly wanted. I had become the eagle soaring at the highest levels of power. I had done it all for her. About that, the governor hesitated. I'm afraid I can't grant that request. A jolt went through me, cold and sharp. What? The word escaped my lips before I could stop it. Helena has found someone else. It's out of my hands, Thorne said, putting on a show of helpless fatherly sympathy. It felt like a physical blow. The room swam before my eyes. I don't believe you. I want to see Helena. I want to hear it from her. Leo, watch your tone, someone snapped. But I didn't hear them. My mind was reeling, stuck on a single phrase. She has found someone else. I can live without the job. But was she, the woman I'd built my entire world around, also part of the lie? Leo, please, don't be upset, the governor said, his voice dripping with false sincerity. I have other daughters. My second, Julia, and my third, Clara, are both wonderful young women, beautiful and intelligent. You can have your pick. I'll even preside over the ceremony myself. But I knew him too well. There was something else going on. The entire foundation of our agreement was Helena. He knew I would have never dedicated my life to his administration without her. I repeated myself, my voice flat. I want to see Helena, face to face. You'll shut your mouth. A new voice snarled from the crowd. A young man in a tailored suit stepped forward. You don't have the right to speak her name. She's my fiancée now. Julian Croft, of the Croft dynasty, a family whose old money network stretched back centuries, a corporate behemoth that controlled half the resources in the Midwest. And just like that, everything clicked into place. 3 months ago, the Croft Empire formally severed its ties with the Calumet Confederacy and aligned with New Haven, bringing 7 resource-rich counties and a staggering amount of capital with them. In an instant, New Haven's power skyrocketed, positioning us to become the dominant state in the nation. The price, it seemed, was a marriage alliance. The Crofts wanted Helena, and the governor was more than happy to oblige. And me? I was just a boy from a no-name town, a pawn who had served his purpose. Leo, Helena has already agreed. The governor has given his blessing. It's a done deal, Julian Croft sneered, his face a mask of smug victory. He was a man of immense privilege who believed talent and success were his birthright. To him, a beautiful woman like Helena was just another asset to be acquired. The room was silent. They all knew. This entire meeting was an ambush designed for me. Just as I was about to speak, the doors opened. A junior aide announced, her voice trembling, Ms. Helena Thorne. She entered, and the air seemed to still. She was as breathtaking as ever, her hair a cascade of dark silk, her dress a slash of crimson against the room's muted tones. She was the woman who haunted my dreams. But the warmth I remembered was gone, replaced by a chilling, impenetrable indifference. Her cold expression confirmed my worst fears. "I'm here," she said, her voice flat. "What did you want to say?" I faltered. I already knew the answer, but I had to ask. I had to hear it. "Do you really want to marry this pig?" I asked, gesturing at the preening Julian Croft. Helena's face hardened. "He is my fiancé now. I won't have you speak about him that way." She took a breath, as if preparing a speech. "We all have duties, Leo. I am a thorn. I have a responsibility to my family and to this state. The gap between us is just too wide. My father has been generous, offering you the director of Metro Affairs position. You should be grateful. Isn't your dream to serve the Commonwealth? Can't you do that in this new role? Or was everything you did just to have me? I'm so disappointed in you." As she spoke, Julian Croft's hand rested possessively on the small of her back. I watched her, waiting for her to pull away. She didn't. Instead, she leaned into his touch, the picture of a devoted couple. Rage, hot and blinding, surged through me. My fists clenched so tightly my knuckles turned white. I ground my teeth, forcing the words out. "Are you sure about this?" "It's my choice," Helena said, lifting their joined hands slightly, her expression perfectly serene. "Fine." I bit out, my voice dangerously low. I unclenched my fists, fighting to control the inferno inside me. I refused to look at her face any longer. "I hope you don't regret it." Maybe that's all it ever was. Maybe she saw my talent and used her charm to leash me, to turn me into a loyal dog for her family's ambitions. In her world, my devotion meant nothing against the cold calculus of power. Marrying a Croft would secure her family's dynasty for another generation. And me, the used-up chess piece, was now a liability. With New Haven secure, they could afford to toss me aside. The dead-end job was a pathetic attempt to placate me, to keep me from making waves. I turned my back on her and faced the governor, the grand state seal gleaming on the wall behind him. This room, where I had shaped the future of a nation, suddenly felt like a cage. With nothing left to tie me here, it was time to leave. "Governor, I hereby request to resign from my position as acting chief of staff. I'm retiring from public life. I had poured my soul into this state for years, dragging the Thorne administration back from oblivion. And my official title was still just a mid-level advisory role. Acting chief of staff. For years, I did the work of the most powerful man in government, but without the title, without the recognition." A gasp went through the room. They had wanted to humble me, to put me in my place, not to lose me entirely. Who would manage my reforms now? Who would dare? They had all seen the tangible results, the booming economy, the stable society, but none of them had the guts or the vision to see it through. Governor Thorne was stunned for a moment. Then his face twisted into a cold sneer. "Do you really think this state can't function without you, Leo? Let me tell you something. New Haven's strength comes from the unity of its people, not the work of one man." "Leo Vance, have you lost your mind?" Helena's voice cracked, her icy composure finally breaking. "You're going to resign just because I won't marry you? If you walk out that door today, I swear you will never see me again." She thought she could threaten me, then offer a sliver of hope to pull me back in a line, to keep me working for her father. I almost laughed. To think I had loved this creature. I must have been blind. "There are plenty of fish in the sea," I said with a shrug. "What did you just say?" she shrieked, her face contorted with rage. She couldn't believe I'd used such a common phrase on her. "Since you insist on being so ungrateful, you'll have no one to blame but yourself for what comes next." "Leo Vance, think carefully," Governor Thorne's voice boomed. "The moment you walk out of this capital, you're no longer the acting chief of staff. You're a nobody. Any stray dog on the street could take a bite out of you. My mind is made up, I said calmly. I unclipped the security badge from my suit jacket and placed it neatly on the conference table. I then took off the watch she had given me for my birthday, the one with the custom band she designed herself, and set it on top of the badge. My face was a mask of utter calm. Seeing my resolve, the other officials knew it was over. They just shook their heads. Their governor was no visionary. He was a fool. Losing Leo Vance was going to send shockwaves through the entire Commonwealth. Leo Vance, if you take one more step, you are no longer a citizen of New Haven. Helena screamed, her voice raw with desperation. Let him go, Thorne bellowed, his face purple with rage. I want to see if the sky falls without you here to hold it up. So do I said quietly, and turned toward the doors. I walked past the secretaries and senators, men I had mentored, men whose careers I'd saved. Every one of them stared at the floor. Not a single person spoke up for me. Not a single person asked me to stay. I walked out of the room without looking back. Outside, the October sky had opened up. A freak blizzard was raging, the wind howling and the snow falling in thick, wet sheets. I pulled up the collar on my coat and laughed. Who says heaven has no sense of occasion? A blizzard to see a man off. And with that, I walked out into the storm. 3, boss, where are we going? The driver was 7, one of the kids I'd pulled off the streets during the urban pacification campaigns. There were 9 of them in total, numbered 1 through 9. I'd given them an education, taught them strategy, finance, and tradecraft. Today, they were my secret weapon, leaders in various industries and government agencies across the rival states, my true inner circle. They all operated under one name, the Sparrow Network. Northridge, I said, my breath fogging in the cold air. Not going back to the apartment? 7 asked, expertly navigating the snow-clogged streets of the capital. No time. Thorne, I just burned that bridge. He'll have state police after us before the hour is out. My apartment was just a place to sleep. Beside my staff, I had no attachments here. All right, straight to Northridge it is, 7 said with a grim smile, his eyes fixed on the road. Time to go see Queen Valeria, rally the Northridge Rangers, and come back to burn this city to the ground. I shot him a wry look. Don't be dramatic. I'm just going to see the country. Retire. Live a quiet life. Valeria Rojas was the formidable leader of the Northridge Republic. Years ago, after her father's death, Northridge had nearly torn itself apart in a civil war. I had helped her crush the rebellion and secure her position as the new leader. In return, she forged an alliance with New Haven. The threat of her legendary Northridge Rangers had kept our rivals at bay, giving New Haven the breathing room it needed to rebuild. Oh, 7, I said suddenly. Tell 9 to get a security detail on Professor Finch. Immediately. Alastair Finch, my old professor from Georgetown, dean of the political science department. He was my mentor, and even though he had also tutored Governor Thorne years ago and held immense respect in academic circles, I couldn't afford to take any chances. 7 nodded. A moment later, I saw him tap a message into his phone, a digital carrier pigeon, sent out into the world. As our SUV moved through the city, people on the streets recognized the vehicle. They paused, bowing their heads in respect. In their eyes, I was the true protector of the Commonwealth. Good people, I thought. Hard-working, resilient. They'd follow a true leader through hell itself. I sighed. I knew Marcus Thorne's limitations all too well. Hard times were coming for them. The towering skyscrapers of Olympia City shrank in the rearview mirror, eventually becoming a faint line on the horizon. The farther north we drove, the wilder the landscape became. Soon, the world was nothing but a blanket of white, a single black SUV cutting a path through the snow, leaving a long, dark track in its wake. Back in the capital, the government was already in chaos. Without me, the different factions turned on each other like wolves. No one dared to touch my ongoing reforms, and the entire system began to grind to a halt. We drove for a month, pushing north, nearing the New Haven border at a strategic choke point called Irongate Pass. Suddenly, the ground began to vibrate, a low thrum that grew into a deafening roar. It was the sound of engines. A lot of them. Boss, we've got company, 7 yelled over the noise. State troopers. Looks like a woman in charge. He gripped the wheel, ready to floor it. Pull over, I said calmly. Let's see what they want. The commander of the state's elite tactical unit was Marcus Cole, a man I'd personally promoted. Many of the troopers knew me. Seven nodded, pulled a compact pistol from the glove box, and stood by my side as I exited the vehicle. The column of armored vehicles ground to a halt around us. The lead vehicle's door opened, and the person who stepped out was the last one I expected to see. It was Helena. "Are you here to kill me? Or to ask me to come back?" I asked, my hands clasped behind my back, my voice devoid of emotion. Helena's expression was a storm of conflict. "Leo, do you really have to do this? Did I have a choice?" I countered. "Whatever happened, you can't just abandon your post. Your reforms will collapse. If you come back with me now, you can still be the acting chief of staff. You can still be my father's most trusted advisor." She was still so naive, still thought I was the same loyal dog who would come running at her call. I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Go back and keep being a good little soldier for the Thorn family? What if I say no?" Her face instantly hardened. "Then you won't leave New Haven alive." She raised her hand, and dozens of troopers raised their rifles, surrounding us. "Leo, I'm asking you one last time," she said, her voice shaking with rage. "Are you really going to betray New Haven? Betray me?" Her father and Julian Croft were right. He was never going to come back. My own face turned to stone. What's the point of this conversation? The circle of troopers tightened. I once loved her so much I would have burned the world down for her. I had played their game, won their wars, and my reward was a knife in the back. "Monty," I said, looking past her to the big, burly commander of the unit. "Are you going to kill me too?" Marcus Monty Cole, a mountain of a man I'd personally rescued from a disastrous black ops mission 3 years ago. He looked torn. After a long, tense moment, he stepped forward and saluted me, not her. "Sir, I will never forget what you did for me." Helena shrieked. "Monty, this is treason." Monty's voice was a low growl. "With all due respect, ma'am, no. This man saved my life and gave me my career. I will not be the one to put a bullet in his back. He is a traitor to the state. Are you going to betray your governor, your oath?" Monty ignored her, his eyes on me. "Sir, I'll escort you to the border." "Good," I said, clapping him on the shoulder. I knew I could count on him. "I'm glad we're still brothers." "Monty, you bastard. I'll have my father strip you of your commission for this." Helena screamed, completely losing her composure. She couldn't believe her own tactical commander would defy her. "Leo Vance, you truly are a traitor. You've even corrupted our own military. My father was right about you. If I were a traitor, I'd be sitting in your father's chair right now," I sneered. "When I had full command of the military after the insurgency, one word from me could have sent my tanks rolling into the capital. You should take your shot now," I taunted her. "You won't get another chance." I turned and got back in my SUV. At Monty's command, the state troopers lowered their weapons and cleared a path. Monty and a score of his most loyal men formed an escort, leading us toward the border, leaving a stunned and furious Helena Thorne standing alone in the snow. The storm intensified, the wind howling like a ghost, until our convoy was completely swallowed by the blizzard. Iron Gate Pass, the border between New Haven and Northridge. The wind here was a physical force, so cold it felt like it could freeze your bones solid. Dark clouds hung low over the fortress-like checkpoint. On the walls, 5,000 New Haven border guards stood shivering, their faces pale with fear as they stared out into the blizzard. Because on the other side, 80,000 Northridge Rangers were arrayed in perfect battle formation. If it weren't for the fortified walls of Iron Gate, those 5,000 guards would be annihilated in under 30 minutes. 80,000 elite cavalry against 5,000 poorly equipped infantry wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter. The post commander, a man named General Kane, was completely bewildered. Just a few days ago, he'd been sharing drinks with the Northridge commander, General Valerius. Northridge was supposed to be their staunchest ally. The border was practically open, and these 5,000 guard were mostly reservists and older soldiers, just enough to fly the flag. No one ever imagined they'd see a hostile force on this front. Then the message had arrived from the capital 2 days ago. Leo Vance had committed treason. At first, Kane hadn't believed it. Anyone could be a traitor, but not Leo. Leo was New Haven. But now, with 80,000 of the world's most feared soldiers at his doorstep and intelligence reports flooding in, he was starting to understand. The governor is a fool. The girl is a fool. Kane slammed his fist on the parapet. In today's world, everyone knew the name Leo Vance. Rival states had openly said that having Leo on your side was worth more than 100,000 soldiers. What was one governor's daughter compared to that? A real leader would have offered up his entire family to keep a man like Leo. He was a once-in-a-generation talent who could take a failed state and turn it into a superpower in less than a decade. It was easy to conquer cities, but impossible to find a mind like his. And now, the proof was right in front of him. 80,000 Rangers poised to strike. Northridge's entire military might was just over 90,000. This was practically their whole army. Kane was torn. Leo Vance had personally promoted him. This command post at Iron Gate Pass, Leo had arranged it. Otherwise, he'd still be a low-level officer in some forgotten logistics unit. But if he stood aside, 80,000 Rangers would pour through the pass and be at the capital's gates in days. "Sir, the SUV is approaching the gate. What are your orders?" a young lieutenant asked, his voice shaking. Kane slapped him on the back of the helmet. "What do you mean? What are your orders? Do you see those 80,000 warriors out there with plasma rifles aimed at our heads? Are you going to stop him?" The lieutenant shrank back. "And sir, a priority message. Helena Thorne and the new Lord Marshal, leading a force of 100,000, are less than 30 miles away." Kane froze. Lord Marshal? Who's the new Lord Marshal? Julian Croft, Helena Thorne's new fiancé. A surge of pure, unadulterated rage went through Kane. For me. For the injustice of it all. What a goddamn disgrace. If it were me, I'd have left too. He took a deep breath. "Send the order. The second that SUV is through the gate, seal it. Man the defenses. Get the railguns, the siege cannons, the plasma batteries. Get everything you have on that wall now." Kane commanded. "And now, let's go welcome Ms. Thorne." As we passed through the massive gates of Iron Gate, I was officially out of New Haven. I was in Northridge territory. A unit of Rangers was already waiting. At their head was a broad-shouldered, red-faced man, General Valerius, left-hand commander of Northridge. "Sir, we've been expecting you," Valerius boomed, slamming a fist over his heart in the traditional Northridge salute. His eyes shone with a zealous fire. "On behalf of all the soldiers of Northridge, welcome home. When I had helped Valeria Rojas secure her throne, I had personally led the Northridge Rangers, crushing dozens of rival factions and uniting the territory. Valerius had been a junior officer then. I'd recognized his talent and promoted him through the ranks. His respect for me bordered on worship. I turned to Monty Cole. "Go back, my friend. Be careful." Monty's eyes were wet with unshed tears. He gave me a sharp salute. "Take care of yourself, sir." Our vehicle moved deeper into Northridge territory. Soon, the horizon was filled with the sight of the Ranger Army. As we passed, tens of thousands of soldiers, sitting atop their armored steeds, slammed their fists to their chests in silent, powerful tribute. A single rider broke from the ranks, galloping towards us on a magnificent black stallion. The rider moved with a fluid grace, seemingly one with a horse. Snowflakes dusted her dark, wild hair, which flew behind her like a banner. She was the embodiment of the untamed spirit of the North. It was Valeria Rojas, the Queen of Northridge. She was even more beautiful than I remembered. "Now, you finally came to see me," she cried, her voice thick with emotion. She leaped from her horse and threw herself into my arms. "You have no idea how much I've missed you." I stroked her hair, inhaling the clean, crisp scent of the winter air on her. A warmth spread through my chest. To have a woman like this care for me, and to have ignored her for so long. I truly was a fool. "I'm here now," I whispered, holding her tight. "And I'm not leaving." Valeria pulled back, her tears turning into a radiant smile. "Really? You're not going back to your precious Helena?" I just smiled and gently flicked her forehead. "Your Majesty, bad news. The New Haven army is advancing out of the pass," a scout reported, galloping up to us. Instantly, Valeria's demeanor shifted. The vulnerable woman in my arms vanished, replaced by the formidable Queen of Northridge. Her face became a mask of ice. "They dare pursue my Leo even here? Do they think the Northridge Rangers are a joke?" She leaped back onto her horse, her voice ringing across the plain like a trumpet. "All units, battle formation. Let's see how many soldiers New Haven has to spare for our meat grinder. The 80,000 Rangers moved as one, a torrent of steel and thunder that made the very ground tremble. Valeria held out her hand to me. Come, my king, ride with me to meet your old flame. I never ride in the back, I said, swinging up onto the horse behind her. She immediately wrapped her arms around my waist, pressing her cheek against my back like a contented cat. Helena Thorne, flanked by Julian Croft and General Kane, led a combined force of 150,000 soldiers out onto the plain. Within minutes, the two armies stood facing each other in a tense standoff. As they drew closer, I felt a tremor of rage run through me. Hanging from their lead banner, swaying in the wind, was a human head. It was Monty Cole's. Marcus Cole, who colluded with the traitor Leo Vance in an attempt to overthrow the state, has been executed for treason. His head is to be displayed to the army as a warning. Julian Croft's voice, amplified by his vehicle's speakers, echoed across the field. Helena, you will pay for this. I roared, the sound ripped from my very soul. Monty was a good man, a loyal soldier who had saved the governor's life on 3 separate occasions. Without him, Thorne would have been dead years ago. Helena's voice, cold and triumphant, shot back. He died because of you, Leo. If you get on your knees and surrender, I will allow him a proper burial. Otherwise, I will have his body desecrated and his family hunted down and exterminated. You're insane, I whispered, my voice hoarse. Your whole family is insane. My nails dug into my palms. I had led him to his death. I had brought him out of obscurity only to send him to the gallows. Leo, don't listen to her, Valeria murmured, holding me tight. General Cole is gone. All we can do now is avenge him. You said you were just resigning, Helena screamed, her face a mask of jealous fury. And the moment you leave New Haven, you're shacking up with this northern slut? After you swore you'd love me forever? I was a fool to even follow you to Irongate, to beg you to come back. Before I could answer, Valeria spurred her horse forward, pointing a finger at Helena. Your family has no shame, she bellowed, her voice carrying across the entire battlefield. You break your promises, you cast aside a genius like Leo for a corporate pig like Croft. Only a moron like Marcus Thorne would make such a trade. And he calls himself a leader? Bah! She turned her venom on Helena. And you pathetic woman, you used your body to trap him, to make him work himself to the bone for your family. Then you throw him away to marry someone else. You're a cheap, disgusting whore. You came here begging him to come back? You call murdering his best friend and bringing an army of 150,000 to kill him begging? I have never seen such shamelessness in my life. You, Helena sputtered, her face turning crimson. She looked like she was about to choke. Behind her, General Kane and his officers had gone pale, realizing the truth of the situation. I was speechless. I'd never seen this side of Valeria. This was the fierce warrior queen of the legends. You what? Valeria mocked. The man your family threw away like trash, I, Valeria Rojas, will cherish. The power your family was too scared to give him, Northridge will grant him. She wheeled her horse around to face her army, her voice rising to a deafening roar. From this day forward, Leo Vance is the king of Northridge, and I, Valeria Rojas, will be his queen. A deafening silence fell over the plains, followed by the thunderous sound of 80,000 Rangers dismounting and kneeling as one. All hail the king! All hail the queen! I was stunned. Just like that, I was the king of Northridge? Valeria, are you serious? You're giving me Northridge. She took my hand, her voice soft again. My people respect strength above all else. They're willing to die for a true warrior. You've already proven yourself to them. The fact that my army kneels for you is all the proof you need. If you hadn't been so obsessed with your little Georgetown girlfriend 3 years ago, I would have dragged you back to my capital and made you my husband then. I squeezed her hand, a genuine smile touching my lips for the first time in months. What a woman. Go, my king, she said, pressing the golden-hilted command sword, the symbol of Northridge sovereignty, into my hand. Whether you storm Irongate today or kill that woman, I will support you. Helena's face was now darker than the storm clouds overhead. The man she had treated as a disposable tool was now the king of a rival power. Could she have been wrong? Could her father have been wrong? No, no, he was just a dog who worked for a family. This whole nation belonged to the Thorns. What right did Leo Vance have to negotiate with her? He was clearly the traitor, colluding with Northridge all along. The thought solidified her rage. All units advance, she shrieked. Capture Leo Vance alive. I want him to spend the rest of his life on his knees, begging for my forgiveness. General Kane rushed to stop her. Ma'am, you can't. They have 80,000 Rangers. 80,000. On open terrain, an infantry force of 150,000 was no match for an elite armored cavalry division, let alone 250,000. Especially since they had marched in such a hurry, they hadn't brought any anti-cavalry hardware. Don't be an idiot, Julian Croft yelled, brandishing a ridiculously oversized ceremonial axe. We have 150,000 troops to their 80,000. The advantage is ours. Kane buried his face in his hands. It was over. Helena produced her father's executive order, assuming direct command over Kane's 5,000 border guards. Your Highness, allow me to capture Leo Vance for you, Croft declared, urging his command vehicle forward. Meanwhile, I had switched to a fresh warhorse, a powerful stallion. I rode to the front of my own lines. Monty, my brother, I thought, your spirit is not far. Watch me avenge you today. If the Thorns are going to force my hand, then so be it. If I kept backing down, the people of New Haven would suffer under Thorn's incompetence. In a few years, he would run the state into the ground again. Those people who had bowed to me on the streets, they didn't deserve that fate. Leo Vance, you should surrender now. Julian Croft sneered over the comms. Or what happened to Monty Cole will happen to you. Did you kill him? I asked, my voice deadly calm. I reached down and took the weapon offered to me by a ranger. A custom-forged kinetic spear, a legendary weapon gifted to me by Valeria's father, said to have belonged to a warrior of old. Heavy, perfectly balanced, and lethal. I had left in Northridge, thinking my days as a warrior were over, not wanting to scare Helena with my more martial side. Now, with the spear in my hand, the old fire returned. The muscle memory, the adrenaline, the thrill of the fight. Not only did I kill him, but I'm going to eliminate everyone you've ever cared about, Croft boasted, charging forward. Helena is mine. My eyes narrowed. My fingers tightened on the spear's grip. With a surge of power, I swung the heavy weapon in a massive arc, the force of it creating a sonic boom that cracked the air. Julian Croft's smug expression turned to one of pure terror. He tried to raise his pathetic axe to block. How are you? He never finished the sentence. The spear hit him with the force of a freight train, shearing him and his vehicle in half. A deafening roar erupted from the Northridge Rangers. This was their king. Helena's face went white. She trembled, whispering, "You know how to fight." I laughed, the cold, empty sound. In your eyes, I was just a political strategist, a nerd who worked for your father. Did you ever, for 1 second, bother to truly know me? Helena was silent. The morale of the New Haven army shattered. Their commander had been killed in a single, contemptuous blow. How could they possibly win this fight? Just then, Seven raced to my side, his face grim. Boss, it's bad. Professor Finch. Thorn executed his entire family. My world tilted. I snatched the encrypted datapad from his hand. Finch executed for defending Leo. Family purged. Leo's apartment staff. All 21 murdered. A coppery taste filled my mouth. I coughed, and a spray of blood splattered onto the white snow. The world went dark, and I fell from my horse. Now, Seven and Valeria rushed to my side, catching me. He killed them. My professor. It's my fault. I choked out, sinking to my knees. Professor Finch was a titan of academia, a national treasure. He had been Thorn's mentor too. I thought, no matter how ruthless he was, Thorn would have shown some mercy, some respect. And my staff, my butler, Robert, who had cared for me like a father, all of them slaughtered by the Thorns. Helena watched, silent for a moment, as if she finally understood the gravity of what had happened. Now, if you come back with me now, I could talk to my father. Your family killed my mentor. My staff. I set my voice a low, terrifying growl. The grief in my heart was hardening into something murderous. Helena's face paled. Professor Finch was comparing you to my father in public. He was openly challenging the governor's authority. And that's a reason to purge his entire family? I bellowed. As a citizen, his duty was to the state, not to defending a traitor. He got what he deserved. Helena shot back, her voice turning shrill. And you've killed Julian. You've had your revenge. Are you really going to start a civil war over this? I started to laugh, a broken, unhinged sound. You're right. A fool like Marcus Thorne isn't worthy of my loyalty. And you're the most arrogant, self-absorbed idiot I have ever met. I rose to my feet, my voice thundering across the plains, seeming to shake the very heavens. The old order is dead. A new day is dawning. I, Leo Vance, am in open rebellion. The sound rolled like thunder, stirring the snow and glinting off the blades of 80,000 soldiers. Throughout history, a warrior earns his honor in two ways: by achieving the ultimate victory against a foreign foe, which I have already done. The only thing left is to march south and take down a tyrant. Go back and tell Marcus Thorne to wash his neck. I'm coming for his head myself. I raise my spear. These 150,000 soldiers will be the down payment. By order of the king, storm Iron Gate Pass. Annihilate the New Haven army. Take no prisoners. At my command, the 80,000 Northridge Rangers descended upon the New Haven army like a pack of wolves. On the open plains, it was a massacre. I led a vanguard charge that punched straight through their lines in minutes. The heavy spear felt like an extension of my own body, each swing a whirlwind of destruction, leaving a trail of mangled bodies and wrecked vehicles in its wake. The New Haven soldiers were paralyzed with shock. They knew the legendary strategist, the Shadow Governor. They had never heard of the unstoppable warrior, the god of the battlefield. Helena stared, her face a mask of utter horror, coughing up blood as the reality of her mistake crashed down upon her. It took a squad of her personal guards, sacrificing themselves, to cut a path for her to retreat back toward Iron Gate Pass. In the end, only a handful of them made it back. The battle didn't last long. The once mighty New Haven army was routed, then destroyed. Of the 150,000 soldiers, nearly all were annihilated. Iron Gate was now an empty fortress. General Kane was brought before me, his armor torn, his face streaked with dirt and blood. Kane, swear allegiance to me, and I will make you a marshal in my new army. Marcus Thorne is no leader. You know that better than anyone, I said, my face impassive. Kane was a capable commander whom I had personally chosen. This defeat wasn't his fault. He'd been given an impossible order by two incompetent fools. Kane looked up, a bitter smile on his face. I've always known what kind of man the governor is. You, my lord, are the true savior of New Haven. It's a tragedy he was too blind to see it. Then will you join me? My family is still back in the capital. Allow me to retrieve them first, Kane requested, bowing his head. Granted. Prepare a transport for General Kane, and give him a command of 10,000 Rangers to garrison Iron Gate Pass, I ordered. I trust my judgment in men. Kane looked up stunned. I was giving him command of an elite unit, just like that? My lord, I clapped him on the shoulder. I'm not Marcus Thorne. Kane bowed deeply, his loyalty sealed. He left to assume his new command. Next, I summoned General Valerius and handed him a datapad. Valerius's eyes widened as he read the title. His hands began to shake. This is it. The complete Ares Initiative files. The lost text on grand strategy. I thought it was just a legend. My lord, he said, his voice full of awe, this contains the distilled wisdom of every great military mind in history. With this, Northridge can build an army that will sweep across the continent and forge a new empire. He bowed low, his heart pounding with excitement. In 6 months, I want an unstoppable army of at least 150,000 elite soldiers. Money and resources will be no object, I said calmly. I had long since memorized every word in that text. It was time the world saw its true power. Valerius saluted, his eyes blazing. My lord, give me the recruits and the supplies. And with this book, I will give you an army of gods. The people of Northridge were natural warriors. The only thing that had ever held them back was a lack of resources. That was about to change. After he left, I called for 7. Boss, is it time to activate the Sparrow Network? He asked, already knowing the answer. It is, I confirmed. The network was a deep-cover intelligence agency I had built over 10 years, originally intended to protect and strengthen New Haven. My spies were embedded in every rival state. It was the key to my reforms, the silent hand that guided my policies. I had planned to give it to Helena as a wedding gift. Now it was my ace in the hole. Start with New Haven, I said. That's our home turf. Understood. In the governor's mansion in Olympia City, Marcus Thorne was losing his mind. The stacks of unread intelligence briefs and urgent policy memos on his desk grew higher every day. He'd always left the tedious work of actually running the government to me, only stepping in for the final photo ops and key decisions. He never imagined it could be this overwhelming. Now he was drowning in it. It had only been 2 months since I'd left, and the Commonwealth was already fraying at the seams. My reforms were dead in the water. No one dared to pick up where I left off. The corporate land I had reclaimed for public use was being illegally seized by the old oligarchs. The people were losing faith. The fall harvest had been good, but come spring planting season, there would be riots. Thorne couldn't even begin to fathom how to handle it. Crime was surging. The state was pouring money into law enforcement, but it was like trying to plug a dam with a finger. Gangs were now operating openly on the outskirts of the capital itself. Commerce was grinding to a halt as supply chains were being hit. Then came the final blow. A once-in-a-century superstorm had slammed the southern coast, causing catastrophic flooding. A natural disaster in the middle of winter. It was unheard of, but it happened. Millions were displaced, homes and businesses destroyed. And every single emergency report flooding his desk was a desperate plea for money and aid. But the state treasury was nearly empty. If it weren't for the Croft family fortune propping up the budget, the government would have already defaulted. And now, Julian Croft was dead, killed by my hand. The Crofts were demanding he send the army to invade Northridge and avenge their son. But where was the money going to come from? The only significant grain reserves were in the state's northern breadbasket, hundreds of miles away. How could he possibly launch a war? Thorne was starting to regret it. He truly had no idea just how much I'd been doing, how I had managed to keep this massive, complex machine running so smoothly. He had been in charge for only a few months, and he was already on the verge of a complete breakdown. Governor, urgent news. The Northern Territories. They've rebelled. A terrified aide burst into the office, holding up a military communique. What? Thorne's vision swam. He grabbed the aide by the collar. They've all defected. The Northfields Agricultural Zone and the Bluestone Industrial Sector. They've fallen to Northridge. Their leaders. They were working for him all along, the aide stammered. The blow was so severe Thorne felt a sharp pain in his chest and coughed up a mouthful of blood. Traitor! Traitor! Leo Vance! Thorne roared. He remembered now. The Yellow Jacket insurgency had started in those 2 territories. I had been the one to lead the campaign to pacify them. He thought by removing me, those territories would remain loyal to New Haven. He had been a fool. The realization sent another wave of pain through him. He collapsed into his chair, gasping for breath. The 2 territories were small, but strategically vital. The Northfields were the source of the state's livestock and food supply, and Bluestone was its industrial heartland. With Northridge having already seized Arngate Pass, they now controlled 3 of New Haven's most critical regions. Overnight, New Haven had gone from being a premier state to a second-rate power. Helena had been confined to her room ever since the disaster at Arngate, sick with shame and refusing to see anyone. Governor Leo Vance's power is growing by the day, said the new chief of staff, Patriarch Croft, Julian's father. If we don't crush him now, New Haven is doomed. With Irongate lost, there are no natural defenses between his army and Olympia City. The only reason he hasn't attacked yet is because he's waiting for the spring thaw. Thorne broke out in a cold sweat. What do you suggest? He asked, his voice weak. We form an alliance with the other states. A joint military operation to destroy Northridge. When it's over, we divide the spoils. And what about our lost territories? Governor, we don't have time to worry about them now. If we delay, Leo Vance will be marching on this city. Thorne's legs gave out, and he sank into his chair, a broken man. 7. The defection of the 2 northern territories was no surprise to me. I had personally appointed their administrators. I had lifted the punitive taxes Thorne's administration had placed on them and given them a chance to rebuild. When they heard I had established my own kingdom, they were the first to join me. The administrator of the Bluestone sector was Sparrow 6, one of my own. 6 months had passed since the battle at Iron Gate. My new army was ready. 150,000 elite Northridge Rangers, fully trained and equipped. The grain from the North Fields had been secured. Northridge was now a military and economic powerhouse. Spring had arrived, and the snows were beginning to melt. In the royal tent, Valeria was lounging on a bed of furs, her silken robe barely concealing the lines of her body. I was finally beginning to understand the old poets who wrote about kings neglecting their duties for love. "This is the life," I murmured, gently stroking her cheek. I thought back to my years in New Haven. The endless work, the sleepless nights, the stress that had turned my hair gray at the temples. All for a monthly dinner with Helena, where the greatest intimacy we shared was holding hands. I had spent so much time and energy trying to manage her mercurial moods. Waking up from that delusion felt incredible. "You know, it's been months," I said, my hand drifting down to her flat stomach. "And there's still no sign of a little prince or princess." "I don't know," she teased, poking me in the chest. "Maybe the mighty king of Northridge isn't as potent as they say." "Is that so? Then I'll just have to prove my royal might once again." "Stop. We can't." By March, the ice had broken, and the land was ready for war. My army of 350,000, 150,000 Rangers, and 200,000 infantry was massed at Iron Gate, ready to march. "Your Majesty, the Sparrow Network has an update," Seven reported. "New Haven has formed an alliance with the Calumet Confederacy, the Delmarva Alliance, and the Republic of Ethel. They've signed a pact to launch a four-pronged invasion of Northridge. They plan to carve up our territory after they win." I just smiled. These are the same old tricks I used to defeat 10 years ago. Back then, it was Delmarva and Calumet threatening to invade New Haven. I had used diplomacy to turn them against each other. "My lord, should we split our forces to meet them?" General Valerius asked. I shot him a look. "Have you learned nothing from the Ares files?" Valerius grinned sheepishly. "Apologies, my lord. I'm a soldier, not a schemer. Just point me at the enemy, and I'll destroy them." I sighed and leaned back. "The king already has a plan," Valerius said, stepping in smoothly. "You just worry about preparing the army to march on New Haven the moment the weather clears. The supplies and weapons are ready." "My queen is a true strategic partner," I said, giving her nose a playful tap. "The leader of the Calumet Confederacy is a notorious lek," I began, laying out the plan. "7. Send him a message. If he stays out of this war, I will deliver him New Haven's greatest beauty, Helena Thorne, as a gift. If he insists on joining the fight, my 150,000 Rangers will ignore New Haven and burn his capital to the ground." The Calumet government was a mess, and its leader was a decadent fool. He'd take the deal. Delmarva is 1,000 miles away. They have to cross the Great Canal to reach us. I want a team to sabotage the main locks. We'll give their army a little flood to deal with. I doubt they'll be in a hurry to join the fight after that. "What about Ethel, my lord?" Valerius asked. "They're the strongest of the states, with an army of over 500,000. And they have the Sea Wolves, their elite special forces." I smiled. "For Ethel, I have a special surprise." Seeing my confidence, my commanders relaxed. "One more thing," I added. "Have Sparrow 9 burn down New Haven's Treasury Department. Let's see how Thorne plans to fund his war without any money." For 5 years, I had been placing my assets, preparing for a national stage. I had originally intended to put Marcus Thorne on the throne of a united nation. But he was too weak, too incompetent. I would have to do it myself. "My queen," I said, turning to Valeria as the tent flaps closed. "The hour is late. It is time for the king to rest." Valeria gasped. "My lord, it's the middle of the afternoon." "The king says it's night. Are you going to defy a royal decree?" 10 days later, in Olympia City, Governor Thorne was roaring like a caged animal, smashing everything in his office. A group of aides huddled in a corner, trembling. Calumet betrayed us. They took our $10 million in aid, and now they refuse to send troops. Ingrates. Traitors. And that Leo Vance. That snake. He pretends to be a man of honor, but he's been plotting this all along. Thorne kicked over his desk, his face purple with rage. Governor, calm yourself, Patriarch Croft said, stepping into the ruined office. We still have Ethel. They have confirmed they are sending 200,000 troops, led by their finest general, the young prodigy, Sterling. Is this true? Thorn asked, clinging to the news like a drowning man to a raft. It is. Ethel's response just arrived. Thorn let out a shaky breath. However, Governor, there is more bad news, Croft said hesitantly. Thorn's eye twitched. The Great Canal on the Delmarva border has been sabotaged. With the spring rains, the flooding is catastrophic. Delmarva's army has suffered thousands of casualties and is completely stranded. Their leader sent a message demanding $10 million to repair the canal. Otherwise, they can't meet the invasion deadline. Thorn sighed, his shoulders slumping. Pay them. The massive surplus I had built in the treasury was almost gone. Ever since I left, Thorn had embarked on a series of lavish vanity projects, including the new palace wing they were standing in. All that was left was about $50 million in gold bullion, stored in the main treasury vault. It would be just enough to cover the initial costs of the war. Fire! Fire! An aide burst in, screaming. The treasury building is on fire. Outside, the sky had turned a hellish orange. A massive column of black smoke billowed into the air. It wasn't just the treasury. The fire was spreading to the surrounding government buildings. The city descended into chaos. Where did they get the accelerant? Thorn screamed, his eyes wide with horror. It was Northridge Commandos, sir, the aide stammered. We heard them shouting Northridge slogans. Leo Vance, I will have your head. Thorn roared, then coughed up a spray of blood and collapsed, unconscious. The next day, a pale and shaken Governor Thorn sat before his cabinet. The pact has been signed. The invasion of Northridge is happening. Who will lead the army? The officials looked at each other, then at the floor. No one spoke. To face the man who was once New Haven's god of war, the architect of all their modern military doctrine, it was suicide. Besides, most of the senior military leadership had been appointed by me. Seeing their silence, Thorn's face grew even paler. Just as he was about to start appointing people, the doors opened. Helena entered, dressed in a crisp military uniform, her face set with grim determination. Father, I will lead the army. This war started because of me. It is my duty to end it. Thorn's eyes lit up. Excellent. I am proud to see you so resolute. Since no one else here has the courage, we will do this together, you and I. He stood, his voice booming with false confidence. Hear ye, Helena Thorn is appointed Vanguard Commander, leading 50,000 troops to Arngate Pass. I will personally command the main force of 350,000. Your Excellency, you can't, an old general pleaded. The state cannot be without its leader. They all knew Thorn was an incompetent military commander, and Helena had just lost 150,000 men at this very same location. Sending those two was a death sentence for the army. My decision is final. Thorn snapped. Mr. Croft, you will arrange the logistics for the invasion. With the treasury's gold turned to ash, the entire cost of the war would now fall on the Croft family. Patriarch Croft sighed. This would wipe out the last of his family's liquid assets. His only hope was that the alliance would crush Northridge, and he could recoup his losses from the spoils. Inside my command center at Arngate Pass, I stood before a holographic map of New Haven. My generals were debating attack vectors. Your Majesty, New Haven's vanguard is less than 10 miles from the pass, a scout reported. Who is in command? I asked. Vanguard commander is Helena Thorn. Governor Thorn is leading the main force of 350,000 right behind her. So, New Haven was betting everything on one last, desperate attack. Good. It would save me the trouble of hunting them down city by city. My army was already in position. The massive fortress of Irongate was a double-edged sword. It was designed to keep the northern armies out, but it was just as effective at keeping the southern armies from getting in. I stood on the battlements, watching the horizon. Soon, the New Haven army appeared, a dark tide spreading across the plains, their siege engines rolling forward. It was almost pathetic. I had designed every piece of that military hardware. I knew its every strength, every weakness. All units, pull back to the inner citadel. Prepare for artillery bombardment. As soon as I gave the order, A volley of fireballs arced through the sky, slamming into the outer walls of Iron Gate. Chunks of ferrocrete exploded, but because I had pulled all my soldiers back, our casualties were 0. After the initial barrage, their infantry began to charge. "Helena is truly insane," Valerius said, standing beside me. "Attacking a fortress like Iron Gate with only a 50,000-strong vanguard? Her hatred for you has completely consumed her. She made her choice," I said, my voice cold. "Whatever bond we had was severed the day she allowed my mentor to be executed. This woman was a lunatic. She hadn't even secured her position, and she was already launching a full-scale assault, with her main army still miles away. These poor soldiers, I thought with a pang of pity. "My lord, they're within 100 yards, a spotter called out. "Light the signal fires," I commanded. Outside the pass, hidden in the canyons, General Valerius and 150,000 Northridge Rangers were waiting. A moment later, the ground began to shake. A roar like an earthquake filled the air as the Rangers poured out of their hiding places, a tidal wave of steel crashing into the flank of the New Haven army. The enemy formation instantly disintegrated into chaos. Helena, on her white horse, looked like a demon, her face twisted in a mask of rage. "Leo Vance, you coward. I will personally cut you to pieces and feed you to the dogs." But no one was listening. Her only answer was the thunder of the Rangers' charge and the screams of her own dying soldiers. From the walls of Iron Gate, a storm of arrows and plasma bolts rained down on the trapped army. The battlefield became a charnel house. "Your Highness, we have to get you out of here," a few loyal guards screamed, forming a circle around her and desperately trying to fight their way out. Once again, she was a fugitive fleeing for her life. The only difference was that last time, she had been outside the gates. This time, she was inside my trap. Leo Vance. Marcus Thorne had shattered every valuable object in his command tent. This grand invasion, the last hope of his state, and the very first engagement had cost him 50,000 soldiers. His generals stood with their heads bowed, silent. Thorne was completely unhinged. To make a commander with no experience the leader of the vanguard was sheer madness. In the past few days, any official who had tried to advise against it had been either executed or exiled. Now no one dared to speak. "Well, does anyone have a suggestion?" Thorne demanded. Did he truly have no other competent general besides Leo Vance? He flew into another rage, kicking a young officer repeatedly. "Useless. All of you. You talk a big game in the capital, but on the battlefield, you're worthless cowards." Finally, Patriarch Croft stepped forward. They were all trained by Leo. They can't defeat him. Our only option is to wait for the armies of Ethel and Delmarva to arrive. We will surround him. Then, he will have nowhere to run. "Father, I have another idea," Helena said, stepping out of the shadows. On the walls of Iron Gate, my banner, a stylized V, snapped in the wind. 3 days had passed since the battle. The blood had been washed from the stones, but the metallic tang still lingered in the air. The New Haven army was waiting. So was I. "Your Majesty, they're attacking again," a scout reported. I frowned. They had just been routed. Their morale was at rock bottom. Logically, they should be waiting for their Ethel allies to arrive. What were they thinking? I went to the wall and looked down. As the New Haven army slowly advanced, my blood ran cold. Those animals. "My lord, they're using civilians as human shields," General Valerius whispered, his face a mask of horror. "They're New Haven citizens. What do we do?" He had no problem killing enemy soldiers, but these were unarmed men, women, and even children. To cut them down would give him nightmares for the rest of his life. Helena rode to the front of the formation, a cruel smile on her face. Her voice boomed over their loudspeakers. "Leo Vance, you always claimed to care so much for the common people. Well, here they are. I'd like to see if you have the stomach to kill them." "Helena, this is a war between us. Leave the people out of it. They are innocent. They are your own citizens." I roared. "They were born in New Haven, and they will die for New Haven," she screamed back, her face contorted with madness. "They have enjoyed the protection of my family's rule for years. It's time for them to pay their dues." She gave a signal, and her soldiers began to herd the terrified civilians forward, using them as cover while firing arrows and potshots from behind. The air filled with screams, cries, and curses. Children were trampled underfoot. Any civilian who tried to run was shot down by the soldiers behind them. "Keep moving," Helena shrieked. "He is your beloved shadow governor. He won't hurt you." "My lord, they're approaching the walls." "Give the order. Do we fire or not?" Valerius pleaded, his hands shaking. Faintly, I could hear the cries from below. "Save us, my lord. My child is only 3 years old. We're innocent. Please, sir, don't kill my children." It was a devil's choice. A perfect trap. If I gave the order to fire, the reputation I had built as a protector of the people would be destroyed forever. But were their lives worth less than my ambition? Was I willing to sacrifice them on the altar of my war? "Leo Vance, open the gates." Helena's voice was triumphant. She knew she had me, or I will start executing these traitors. A line of executioners stepped forward, grabbed a dozen people from the crowd, and beheaded them on the spot. Blood sprayed across the dirt. "I will execute 100 people every 15 minutes until you open these gates, Leo. We'll see how long your resolve lasts. They are your people, your family's subjects. Do you feel no guilt?" I cried, tears of rage and sorrow streaming down my face. "Sacrifice is necessary for victory," she laughed, a wild, crazed sound. "We're a few peasant lives compared to bringing you to justice. Kill them. Keep killing them. Your Majesty, you cannot show weakness now," Valerius urged. "Think of our goal. Besides, they are not our people." "But I'm still from New Haven," I whispered, closing my eyes, the image of severed heads burning behind my eyelids. "Helena," I shouted, my voice hoarse, "I will abandon Iron Gate. Let the people go." Her cold reply came back instantly. "Deal. Valerius, evacuate the fortress. Take 50,000 rangers and slip through the west gate into New Haven territory. Find a place to hide and wait for my signal," I ordered. Valerius nodded reluctantly and left to carry out the order. If these people died because of me, I would never be able to sleep again. This wasn't about power or victory. It was about my own soul. Besides, this wasn't my final move. My army retreated from Iron Gate, setting up a new camp 30 miles out on the open plains. Once we were on the grasslands, we were back in our element. This was Ranger territory. The mood in the command tent was grim. With Valerius and 50,000 of our best troops now operating behind enemy lines, our position seemed precarious. No one could believe that the New Haven army would be so depraved as to use their own people as cannon fodder. "My lord, what if they use the same tactic again?" General Kane asked. "Don't worry," I said, a cold smile touching my lips. "I have another army on its way." "Another army?" Kane looked stunned. "Besides the troops with Valerius, our entire force was here. Where would another army come from?" Though my army had abandoned Iron Gate, the monstrous Thorn family did not spare the civilians. They were all executed at the base of the fortress, their crime officially listed as colluding with the traitor Leo Vance. A wave of terror swept through New Haven. Citizens began to flee the state in droves. Dissent grew within the army, but it was ruthlessly crushed by Thorn's loyalists. "Your Excellency, the sea wolves from Ethel have arrived," Patriarch Croft reported to the governor. "Finally," Thorn exclaimed, his recent despair replaced by a surge of confidence. "This time, I will personally annihilate Leo Vance." "However, the Delmarvin army has still not arrived," Croft added. "It doesn't matter. With the sea wolves on our side, Leo is finished," Thorn declared. "Will we be using civilians to lead the charge again?" "Yes, their lives are cheap." The next day, the combined New Haven and Ethel armies prepared for a massive assault. The plan was to attack at dawn. Once again, 20,000 civilians were herded to the front lines to act as a shield. Governor Thorn himself led the charge, his entire army of 350,000 pouring out of Iron Gate, leaving only a token force of 3,000 to guard the pass. "Your Excellency, we have a visual on the Ethel Seawolves. They're 10 miles to our south," a scout reported. Thorn frowned. The Ethel camp was to the east. By now, they should be advancing on my camp, not moving south. A few minutes later, another report came in. Ethel forces had also been spotted to the east. Thorn relaxed. Ahead, he could see my camp. "Men, victory is at hand. Kill Leo Vance." and the riches of Northridge will be yours." Thorn shouted, trying to rally his troops. The New Haven soldiers felt a flicker of morale, but being forced to drive their own countrymen forward as human shields quickly extinguished it. Some of them recognized family and friends in the terrified crowd. What kind of leader would order such a monstrous act? "Governor, something's not right," the general noted nervously. "We're almost on top of their camp, but there's no sign of the Northridge Rangers. The Seawolves must have engaged them elsewhere," Thorn dismissed. "Full-scale assault. Charge. It's a trap. The camp is empty." The first wave of soldiers to reach my camp scattered in panic, but the massive army behind them pushed them forward. "The tents are soaked in gasoline. Get back," another soldier screamed. Thorn, who had just ridden into the camp, felt his blood run cold. He had imagined this moment 1,000 times, but now that he was here, I was nowhere to be found. It was an obvious trap. "Governor, we have to retreat," Patriarch Croft yelled, his face white with terror. At that moment, a single flaming arrow shot through the pre-dawn sky and landed in the center of the camp. The world exploded. The gasoline ignited in a massive fireball, setting off secondary explosions from munitions caches I had left behind. Thousands of New Haven soldiers were instantly vaporized. A thick, black cloud of smoke enveloped the army, and the air was filled with the screams of men burning alive. Thorn's own uniform was on fire, and his beard had been singed off. He stared at the inferno, screaming my name. "Leo Vance! Show yourself, you coward!" Helena was in an even worse state, her hair burned away, her face a mask of primal fear. "Father, the Ethel forces are to the east. We can break through to them. There might be a chance." Thorn snapped back to his senses and began to lead his battered and broken army eastward. 15 minutes later, what was left of his forces staggered out of the inferno. Before they could even catch their breath, they saw them. On a nearby hill, the Ethel Sea Wolves were arrayed in perfect battle formation. They looked like they hadn't been in a fight at all. "General Sterling, my friend," Thorn began to call out. But the Ethel commander simply raised his hand. The entire Sea Wolf army surged forward like a tidal wave. "General Sterling, what is the meaning of this?" Thorn shrieked. This wasn't a rescue. This was another ambush. "Capture Marcus Thorn. A gift from my true commander," Sterling's voice boomed across the field. Thorn froze, a look of dawning horror on his face. Your commander is Leo Vance." "Indeed," Sterling replied, his spear pointed directly at Thorn. "I am Sparrow too." "So it's true. It's all true," Thorn whispered, a broken smile on his face. He remembered now. Years ago, I had offered to give him control of the Sparrow Network as a dowry for marrying Helena. He had dismissed it as some back-alley intelligence outfit and refused. He had no idea how vast, how powerful it was. That the second-in-command of Ethel's entire military was one of my agents. The thought was so staggering, he started to laugh at his own foolishness. "Heaven itself wants my family destroyed," he lamented. As Sterling's spear lunged toward him, 2 loyal New Haven generals intercepted the blow. "Your Majesty, run!" Helena screamed, leading her personal guard to block Sterling's path, buying her father a few precious seconds. After the Sea Wolves finished their bloody work, fewer than 50,000 of Thorn's army remained, mostly cavalry, as the infantry had been left far behind. "Sir, shouldn't we pursue them?" Sterling's second-in-command asked. "This is our chance to capture a head of state." "Our master's orders were only to engage and break them," Sterling replied. The 50,000 survivors fled toward Irongate Pass. Thorn had only one thought in his mind: get back to the fortress. If he could get back, maybe he could get back to his capital and rally what was left of his government. He had made a mistake. A terrible, catastrophic mistake. But his ordeal wasn't over. On the road back to the pass, they ran straight into a wall of Northridge Rangers. "My lord, why didn't you just kill him or capture him back there?" General Kane asked, standing beside me. "Because I want him to suffer," I replied, tightening the reins of my horse. "I want him to feel a glimmer of hope, only to have it snatched away. I want him to understand that every path he chooses leads to his own destruction." "Monty, Professor, Robert, this is for you," I thought. I raised my spear and charged into the fray. "Leo Vance, it's you. You're finally here," Thorn whimpered, so terrified he almost fell off his horse. "Dismount and surrender," I said, my spear leveled at his chest. "I will grant you a merciful end." Suddenly, Thorn scrambled off his horse and fell to his knees, sobbing. "Leo, my boy, I was wrong. I was a fool. Please, for the sake of our old friendship, for Helena's sake, spare me. I'll send her to you. You can marry her. It's all I ask." "It's a little late for that. I already have a queen," I said, unimpressed by his pathetic display. This wasn't remorse. This was the last, desperate gamble of a cornered animal. "Then what do you want? Money? Power? Land?" "I'll give you anything," he pleaded, banging his head on the ground. "Everything you have to offer. I can simply take for myself," I said with a laugh. "Father, don't beg him," Helena cried, charging at me with a sword. "I will die to protect you." "A loyal daughter, at least," I sneered, looking at her blood-streaked face. She was no longer the pristine princess of New Haven. "If you can survive one blow from me, I will let you both go," I offered. Her eyes widened. She screamed, "Father, run," and lunged at me. Thorn didn't hesitate. He leaped on his horse and fled with his last remaining bodyguards toward Iron Gate. Helena's swordsmanship was a joke. I shattered her blade with a single parry and sent her flying from her horse. I glanced down at her crumpled form without a shred of pity. "Tie her up. Clean her up. Send her to the king of Calumet. A promise is a promise. Leo Vance, you bastard. I'll kill you," she screamed, tears of pure rage and despair finally breaking through her pride. Perhaps, in that moment, she finally understood the depth of her mistake. My heart was stone. She had sealed her fate the moment she used innocent people as human shields. To Iron Gate, I commanded, with General Valerius and his 50,000 rangers already inside New Haven. Taking the pass would be child's play. When Thorn and his dozen remaining men reached the gates of Iron Gate, he went completely numb. The walls were lined with my banners. General Valerius stood on the battlements, staring down at him. Thorn finally understood. Valerius had never left. The moment Thorn's army had marched out, Valerius had seized the fortress. Thorn had been a clown, dancing on my strings from the very beginning. He had foolishly believed the sea wolves were his allies. He finally regretted his decision. Not the betrayal, but the gamble. He had bet his entire kingdom and lost. He knew then that I wasn't just trying to kill him. I was trying to psychologically destroy him. The thought made him throw his head back and howl at the sky. "Leo Vance, even if I could do it all over again, I would still have you killed. Even if you defeat me, history will remember you as a usurper, a traitor. Ha ha ha." My voice rang out from the battlements, calm and clear. "I have no interest in being your successor. I am here to be the first of a new line. I will unite these fractured lands, abolish the old ways, and forge a new empire." His jaw dropped. He stood frozen, muttering the word empire over and over. "Let him go," I ordered, signaling for the gates to be opened. A flicker of hope appeared in Thorn's eyes, then vanished. He knew I wouldn't be so merciful, but the instinct to survive was too strong. He and his men spurred their horses through the gates. If he could just get back to Olympia City, he might be able to escape to another state to try and rebuild. But when he passed through the gates, he found the entire inner courtyard filled with thousands of civilians, the common people of the region, and their eyes were filled with the hunger of wolves. "That's him. That's the dog who stole our land. Kill him. My father was one of the human shields. My mother too. My son was only 3 years old. Kill him." The crowd surged forward, a wave of pure hatred, armed with pitchforks and farming tools. Thorn was paralyzed with fear. "I am your governor. You're a ruler. You can't." "To hell with you," someone screamed, and a host slammed into Thorn's back. The dam of restraint broke, and the crowd descended upon him, a flurry of steel and fury. The last ruler of the old Commonwealth of New Haven was torn to pieces by his own people. Beneath the towering walls of Iron Gate, my army assembled, 600,000 strong. "Your Majesty, where do we march next?" I smiled. "To Olympia City, and from there to the stars."